Hey, it's Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Tuesday. It's January 6th. This will be our chart lesson for today, and a little bit similar to yesterday. We started out looking kind of rangy, except a much more defined and longer-term range today than we really had yesterday. Um, really wasn't much of a range in the end yesterday, but today we had a pretty obvious range. We had a failed breakout the low side, kind of an equal failed breakout the high side. And then we just kind of chopped around in here, and then we had a little bit higher high here, and so it was kind of, and really all this turned out to be is a long trap with an opportunity to get short at the very high of the day, and and then look what happens, man. The bottom just falls out of it, and a two-tiered range on the way down. We got a break here, a new low. Tried to correct, and it made another new low, and then we kind of rallied up until last maybe 45 minutes to an hour of the market, it sold back off again. I didn't mark anything after about 145, just into the two. There really wasn't another good trade until after 2 o'clock, so I just didn't mark anything else. But pretty interesting day. Another huge move down. We're down back in the 1900s when we were getting close to 3,000 just not very long ago. So it's been a fairly strong sell-off and a little concerning. But when we do find a bottom, most likely that'll be a very good buying opportunity because every time we find a bottom, it's not long to we're 1,000 points higher, and it could be different this time. But that's what I'd be thinking about. Um, you can always buy you some. When you feel like we found a bottom, you can always buy you some low cost options just to see what happens. I like to do that every now and then. I don't buy options or sell options very often anymore. Um, but when I think we're going to find a bottom, that's the way I try to do it. I don't like to stay in futures long term because you can get just too much can happen overnight. And I don't like being in the futures market overnight. That's why I like day trading because you can um, come in, do your thing, and you go home and you sleep good at night, not worrying about what the market's doing, and not trying to follow the market and sit around switching channels all night, seeing what it's doing, and waking up in the morning and being scared to death because it's done something crazy. And um, so, for that reason, I just don't like to be in the market overnight. If I'm going to try to do that, I'll buy me some options or something. So, and you really need to be pretty sure you don't want to spend a lot of money on options, but they can pay off well if you get it right. But anyway, once we went down, we made our first low. I would have looked for a measured move here, and you see I measured that move right there, and you move it down to the next move down, and you can see we that was it within just a couple of ticks. And we can show you this stuff every day. It works, and within these legs, you can probably find some more measured moves too. So try to use this. You don't want to trade off this, but just use it to try to find your targets when you're in the market. It helps you stay with it and not exit too soon if you got some good runners going. But let's back out and talk about the trades. There were quite a few in here, and I didn't mark them all. I just marked the best ones. When you got a day like this and a move down like this, you know, don't take the riskier trades. Just take the easy ones and stay with them. So, but let's back up quite a few trades, and it's pretty late. It's almost 8 o'clock my time already. I'm just now getting around to doing this. But we had a nice move up here. This was obvious rangy looking, and we had a nice move up. We had a first entry long, pull back a second entry long. Um, it's possible you might have tried to go long there, I guess. I didn't even think about that, but if you draw your trend line up here, you should have this on here. This was really, usually I try to get those first couple of bars there. That was the first break of this trend, but you notice how it's not catching anything, so you got to get it a little steeper. It's just not steep enough. But notice how that catches everything, and then you get your break, and it tries to go higher a second time and fails and turns down. So even if you did go long there, uh, when it turned back down, you got to exit or and you want to consider entering on that trap because this was a range, and the odds are it's going to break out of that range and fail. and you can see how that holds nicely. You can see that little channel up there. You have to play with them sometimes to get them right. But the fact that it's bouncing all up through here is telling you there's some reason. So there's a trend line up there, and notice how well it fits on the upper side as well, and that kind of confirms that you got it right. So, but that's a failed second entry long after a failed breakout, and it's about a measured move from the breakout at the low. So that gives you some more confidence as kind of that we're probably going lower there. And sure enough, it goes right down to the other side. At this point, you don't know if it's going to bounce here or here. This probably looks like the lows at that point, but it bounces earlier. And you got a channel working down through here. Looking back at it, I believe it's a little steeper. I don't think I have it right there. So let's just redraw it. Um, that looks more like it with the overshot here and the overshot at the low side. Um, but that would have given you a break, and that would have made you, and you're coming off a low here, and this, I drew this one green because of the way I originally drew it, but it still would have been a little bit risky entering because we weren't back to the highs yet, even though you got a little trend. But I believe that I had this wrong. I had it was a little bit steeper than what I had it. And so this one would have failed if you'd have taken it, but I wanted to make sure I talk about it. There's a couple reasons to say, hey, I don't want to take that trade. And the main one is that we weren't back to the high yet, even though if you'd have drawn your trend channel line the way I did, you would have been turning down, and it's just a doji. So, but there was a little congestion here, and you could have looked at this as a failed break. But if you took that one, it failed. But looking back on it, the one thing that would have kept you out of it was knowing, hey, we weren't back to the high side again. We just came off the low side, and we're working higher. But you may not have realized that because you didn't have enough information to tell you, other than it bounced here one time before, that this might have been the more important support area. And once it bounced there again, then you obviously knew when it came back the next couple of times to be aware of it. But anyway, you get you got a possible short there if you didn't notice what was going on, and if it did, it would have failed. I really circled this not so much because I think it was a good setup. It was because I just wanted to make sure I talked about it, because this is the kind of place people get they get trapped and so forth. And I didn't think it was worthwhile going long there because it was too close to the high across here where we bounced a couple of times. So you could have gotten whipsawed either way. But when this thing broke higher here and turned and went straight out the other side, I like that. I even like going short just under that one, and it would have worked either way. Didn't get any more than that, and then it went on back up again. And this would have been a first entry down, and we keep kind of chopping around. So this one was a little risky as well. I just really don't like it, but I marked it because, and there is a short-term trend channel working up through there. I don't have that on here, so let's put it on there so there's no confusion. And that's your breaking your new high, so that's another reason to maybe consider that one. And that's another reason to skip that one as well, because you weren't back. You didn't have a break and a new high yet, so you had to keep that in mind. It's always best to wait on a second entry off these highs and lows, and you didn't get that here. Your second entry didn't come to here, so thought it was a little late to go long. It's not a really good long setup. You never really get that trap, and then it turns down right here off that high. I really like that one. This bar went higher first and then came out down out of the low side, so that's the one I liked entering below. But you could have, when it went back up, it might have shaken you out. But I liked it because it went out the high side and then went down, but it did go back up again, but it turned straight back down again. So, okay, I was having a little problem on my headphone there. Had to put it on. Had to pause it a minute, but anyway, that one was a little risky. It would have worked, and you didn't get your second entry. Notice the new high, so it's a first entry pullback, second entry, and it works a little different, counting off new highs or new lows. You just count the first move up as the first leg, and then your first correction, and from there up is your second leg. So You don't get a second entry till, or your second leg or is the same thing as a second entry counting those ways. They're a little different, but I call them second entries because the second entry is just usually the second leg or whatever. So it's too, you don't want to go short down here right into that support. So you got to wait, and you don't really get a good long setup either. You never really get a failed second entry long until here, and it turns it back down. So I like that one. There's a It's hard to say if there was a close outside this one. Again, I think it's a little bit steeper since I narrowed in here. Um, and you can see that. And you had a little close out and a couple of legs up, so you really had everything you need. But the big thing was there was a little trap up here, and I like that. There's a second entry here, but every time we've come off here, we've bounced. So I don't think you can take that. And you definitely don't want to go short below that one, even though it would have worked. I think it's just too risky. And then you get that bounce. And notice this, you got a new low, you got to move up, a pull back, a move up, a pull back. You can't see it, but on a smaller chart, there would be a failed second entry short there. And you know you're probably going to the higher side. So I liked going long there. And most people now recognized all that support, and there's plenty of room back up to the high side. And that's what generated this nice move up. And then you get a break here, and this is a failed second entry short. Notice the new low, and there's your first break lower, then pull back in your second failed. So it's a little risky going long there at that high, but it would have worked, and there is a failed second entry short. I like those type for catching a big move to one side or the other. It didn't happen. It still was good for a trade. A scalp, you wouldn't have got any runners or anything. And there's a second entry short right there, but after that big move up, you had to be real leery. But we do have a break, a new high, and then a double top. So the more I think about that one after the fact, it's always much easier to say, hey, what you would have done after the fact because, it's obvious it went down. But when you're looking at it and it looks like that right there, that's a little bit harder to decide that, hey, look at all that big movement up, and the bias was really up. But you got a trap and you got a double top, and it's a range kind of day, so you do have a range bias to it. So there's some reasons to think short right there. So I'm going to mark that one. And then you get a little failed second entry long right there that fails. Nice bullish bar that looks like it's going to bounce off that, and it turns right back down. You got to go short there because you're probably headed all the way at least to the other side. And then you get a failed second entry short counting off this side of you can count this double top. This is the new high, or this is, I usually count it both ways, especially when a move like that. I'm going to count it both times. And look at that move down, boom. And then you get a breakout pullback short. I didn't mark this breakout pullback short because we've already had a huge move down. And there's a chance you might get trapped there. But when it breaks there and pulls back again and then turns down, it goes out the high side with a bullish bar. And we talked about that yesterday. People always text me and say, yeah, every time I tried to buy the low looking for, a new low, trying to catch the low, I'd get burned. And that's all that does is trap people. Just go short right there on the way that's set up. And look at that move. And this was your clue that this little channel here might be this may be a midline and not the actual channel, even though it's bouncing, because when it went through and then when it goes through again, you're probably going to get a measured move over here just like this, and this is probably going to end up being a midline, which that's what happened. And so look at that drop, and that just catching those two trades alone with a runner could make you a lot of money. 2 or 3 points each, easy, maybe 4 points each. And I mean, if you got in this the way you're supposed to, you'd be in here about 209.50, and that ran straight down to 204. So you could get 4 points out of that, maybe even a little more, depending on how you played it. And what I would have been looking for is, see this leg right here, when it went lower again, I would have looked for a measured leg there first. And you see it went actually a little bit further, and that would have got you, if you got out a tick or so in front of that, you could have got an easy 3 or 4 points there. And then it bounces back. This is really not a second entry, but notice how this is moving up, and you got a little short-term trend line again. I don't have it on there, and you can see that the break, the move to a new high, and then it sells off. So it's got everything you're looking for there, giving you the signal that you can probably go in. It's off the EMA. I would have liked it even better if it was off that trend line, but I wasn't quite sure where that trend line was at that point. So, um, but anyway, you treat that like a double top. Break of the trend, that little short-term trend, a new high, so it's going to sell off. Lots of reasons, and I treated that like a second entry because that's almost like one leg, then first break. Although there is one little tick right there, so theoretically it's not a second entry. But generally, if something looks close enough, especially on a strong move down like that, if it looks like something, it's going to probably act like it. So, and then you get a first entry long, pull back, second entry long, it fails, and you got a big bearish bar. Just go short there, and it ended up bouncing there. So, but it just kept on going, and again, any runners would have been safe again. And look at that, 3, 4, 5 points out of that thing. And by this time, this is when you should have been looking for the other measured leg. I would have measured that, and that's what I would have been using. So if I caught a runner, I may try to ride it all the way to there, and you could have, gotten out a tick or two in front of that and held on to a runner and got that whole thing. It's hard to do, especially when it starts bouncing right in here. But we hadn't been back to the trend line in a while, so it was time. And this is another second entry short. Notice, yeah, there's actually some other. There's a little breakout pullback short right there. So there's some other trades, but I think they're all risky because you've just moved too far. You just almost have to wait for it to come back to the EMA or the trend line and give you a second entry. But notice that new low, pull back first entry, pull back second entry. And look at that bearish bar right off the trend line. Just take that. Even though there's not enough room to get out right there before you get to that low, which is generally something you want to be looking for. As strong as this sell-off was, you just had to consider. Sometimes you just got to take a chance. So, and you're looking for that measured move, and we're not there yet. And we haven't really got down to the low side of the trend line, although we never really get there. Um, that's something I would have been looking for. But then you get, this is almost a repeat pattern right here. Look at this, a new low, first entry pullback. So it almost looks just like that one. This one went a little higher. But that's your first break, and it did go higher first and then turn down. But it went higher above this bar right here. This little green bar, little bullish stand. It went higher and then turned down and went out the lower side. I like that one. Um, I don't think you can enter here. And then you get a little bounce because you do have the break and you got a new low. Although I would have expected a bigger uh, move down than that, but you see we ended up coming back and making another two-legged move down to a new low and then corrected. I don't think you want to buy. I marked this one in green because it was like a little two-legged pullback, and you're looking for a new high, and there's enough room to get out. So you might have considered that one. But I just think it's risky, and if you went long yesterday trying to do this, you probably agree with me. So I marked it in green just in case there's somebody would ask about it, so I could talk about it. But I'd say do not take that. It's a first entry. You don't know that you won't get another measured move down in two legs and then a move to a new high. There's no trap there really. It did go lower and then try to go up, but it couldn't get above that previous bar. So you might have treated this like a failed second entry short because notice the new low, first entry pullback. It got enough, but even though it didn't go lower, you could still consider that. So you might look that way, but I think you're better off to skip that trade. But you got your break of this, move to a new high, you pull back, you try to go higher, and then look at that big bearish bar. They just trap some more people to the long side. Just go short right there. You can't ignore that thing. You don't know that it's going to drop straight down like that, but you figure you'll get a scalp out of it. And then it pulls back to the trend line and gives you another bearish bar. Just go short again. And then it keeps moving lower. I don't think you want to enter anywhere lower. There is a failed second entry long there, but don't go short way down there after that big move down because you're going to get a correction here, and they're going to try to trap people at some point, and it takes off. Um, Actually, that's the wrong one circled. That should be that one right there. But notice that new low, pull back first entry, pull back second entry, and there's a big bounce right there. And you've got your break of this one. So you're looking for a correction, but and that's pretty big. But I still think it's early. You don't have anything really confirmed to the upside yet. It looks like your trend line's a little further down, and that doesn't get there. But those traps very seldom do, fail to work, especially when you're looking for a reversal or a correction. So you might consider that one. Most people would probably wait on a limit order. You see when it came back, went a little further back, and then it bounced again. Um, at this point, I don't think I would want to enter, and it just keeps kind of chopping higher. There's not a really good setup here either. And then it pulls back, and you get a break of this here, and then it goes, and then you get this little trap right here, and then it goes out the low side and reverses and goes straight out the top, and it's right off that original trend line. I like that one, thinking, hey, you probably get a measured leg like this right here. And you see, we actually did a lot better than that. Went much higher than that. And then you got another move up. But I didn't mark anything after that because it was into the 2 o'clock hour before we had another second entry long there. So, and again, it's right off the trend line. So I'll go ahead and circle it just in case. Talk about it real quick. I would have waited for this bar and just on the break above. If we broke above that, that's a pretty good sign. You might have tried the limit order there. I'm not sure if it pulled back and would have filled you or not because I wasn't watching it real closely then. I was actually gone by then, so I wasn't watching it at all. But that's what I saw today. Another really good trading day. When you got a trend like that, just don't look into buying really until you start to get a confirmed, until you get all your rules are met, that you get your break, a couple legs down to a new low, or you're at least getting a confirmed trend in the other direction. Like right here, this is just too early in my opinion. Um, Here you've gotten several attempts to go lower and they all just keep failing and you're working higher. That's when you want to think about maybe starting to, the bias is changing, and now the bias is to the upside until you get right here. You actually had your break here and a couple of legs up, but this was still pretty strong, and then you work back down, and we didn't close too much higher off the very low of the day. Well, I say that, but it's still 10 points. So that was just such a big move today. We went from the high of 2023 all the way to 1984. That's another huge day. So some really good trades the last couple of days. The market's just been kind of weak. So um, hopefully you've been able to get your piece of it. But and it may continue lower. But like I said, just be kind of looking for the low that we've seen recently. Every time we've gotten down, sold off like this, at some point it finds a bottom and it just rockets higher again. It may not do that this time, but just be on the lookout for that, because my guess is it'll probably come at some point. We'll just have to see. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. This is we're over 20 minutes now. I want to try to get this uploaded so people can see the trades for today. But hope you had a great trading day. We'll be back to do it again tomorrow. This is Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.